G'day. Anybody who's flown in and out of Bangkok in Thailand would most likely have landed and departed at the major international airport known as Savannah Buma Airport. But actually there is another international airport to the west of Bangkok by the name of the Don Miguana Airport. The ACA code for that is Victor Tango Bravo Delta, and that's where we are today. And what we're doing here is we're going to take the McDonnell Douglas 80 for a flight down to Phuket in southern Thailand, pretty well known as a major holiday destination in Asia. It borders the Indian Ocean. ACA code for that is Victor Tango Sierra Papa. The MD-80 that we've got here is the JAL livery. We're assuming they're taking a lot of holiday makers from Japan. They've made a stopover in Don Muang Airport. Incidentally, this is an add-on airport that you can get from the org store, but in fact it's a conversion from FSX. So whoever did it did a pretty good job. The only thing I do notice that some of the markings here, particularly the taxi markings in some places, are a little bit hard to see. The other thing is the air bridges don't appear to work, but I suppose that's to be expected. It wouldn't have I assume it doesn't have any auto gate into it. It does have this automatic parking facility in lieu of your marshals. It flashes some lights, but I'm not quite sure if it works properly. But anyway, we're departing, so we don't have to concern ourselves with that. Into the cockpit, and there we have the Mad Dog instrument setup, which can look a little bit daunting at the start, but when you get to know this aircraft, it's not all that bad. The beauty of course is it's a bit of a mixture between the old steam gauges and glass cockpit to a degree. The FMC seems to work quite well. I've never had any problems with it at all. But because the aircraft is a bit of a handful, and particularly if you only purchased it from Rotate, it's one of those aircraft that I really believe that unless you've got a tremendous memory, it's a good idea to use a checklist, whether you have a handwritten one, or in my case I've got this plug-in that someone has produced. And up it comes, left hand side. Well, actually you can move it around if you want to, but I put it up on the left hand side. This is the author of it, and down here as well. And to start it up, I'll warn you, the voice, the first officer's voice is female. Not that that's a problem, but it can get a little bit loud. And the other thing I should mention at this point is there's a couple of things that aren't incorporated into the Rotate. One of them is it doesn't show up rain on the windscreen. It doesn't have AviTab. You can use AviTab if you want as a plug-in by just dropping it down here. In my case, if I want to use it, I can push it over another screen. The other thing I've just recently noticed is when you're trying to do a recording, a video, and you start moving some of these dials around, because it doesn't have Fmod for its sound, it tends to want to blot out the voiceover. I might just give you an example to see if it does that. So as I pull this course knob over and I try and talk on it, it tends to drown me out a bit. I'm not sure if it's doing that in the recording, but during a playback I notice it does that. But anyway, so let's start up the checklist.
Cockpit preparation checklist. Parking brake. Set. Battery.
Parking brake set. Well, to release it, you push it down, but to set it, you lift it up. So it's set. She's now wanting me to check the battery. Battery is a switch here, and it does have a protective cover on it, so you have to go down 1,
on
2,
and locked.
And that locks
Position
it in.
lights.
Now position lights on the MD are over here.
On the emergency exit lights.
But the emergency exit lights are here.
Harm. No smoking signs.
Typical.
On
just there.
Request GPU.
Right. Now we do want to use the GPU. To get that operating, we go down to the instruction manual, if you want to call that, systems. 2 pages. The first one is for fuel and load. All your wing tanks, passengers, cargo, you know, all your Z zero fuel weights, etc. there. The next page, before we do that, if you're used to working in pounds instead of kilograms, you flick it over. Otherwise, there's nowhere in the aircraft that you can set that as a default. Second page takes us over to the ground operations, and while we're here, before we request the GPU, we're going to open the forward door. Actually, we'll see if it opens without the GPU. I'm not sure. We'll see what happens. It looks like it is. Because there's no air bridge, we're going to have to deploy the stairs, and the cargo doors open up. Now what we'll do, we'll just go outside to make sure they're operating. It looks like they do. You don't, in other words, you don't need the GPU to power up to get the doors to open. I'll open that and come back again. Alright, so GPU request. Exit that, and we'll go up, and straight away you'll see that the external power availability light is on. Left and right bus switches are there. Bring them on and tell her that you've requested.
External power bus left and right, both on.
Right.
Start pump.
Okay, I believe you have to start the pump
on
for the
APU start.
APU start, she says, and the APU start is there.
Started. APU powered bus left and right.
Now she's waiting for those to come on, but we're not going to do anything about that just yet. As it is, the gauge here has to come all the way around before the lights, the power buses will be available. So while that's happening, I'm going to go back down and we'll organize the fuel and loading. Now obviously I've been using I use SimBrief to work out all our fuel and loading. You can, if you want, enter each of these ones individually, but that's, you got to know what you're really doing there. Just going by SimBrief, we just go to the block fuel, enter it, 21711, hit enter. Same thing with the passengers. If you're really keen, you can work out all your passengers, forward and aft, and cargo and all that sort of thing. But to make life easy, you just go to the total payload, which of course you can get from SimBrief, and in this case it's 36300, and it fills it in. All again, it's in pounds. You also have to put the trip fuel in the MD as opposed to the Boeing, and again from SimBrief 8852, hit enter. Now what you can do now is you can check to see whether the zero fuel weights match that from SimBrief. 114299, SimBrief is 114883, only a few £100 difference. It really isn't going to make much difference. Gross weight 136011, and SimBrief is 135794. Again, only a couple of hundred pounds difference. So we're happy with those. Now what we can do is we can load the fuel in, but I don't think that will allow us to do that just yet. Oh yes, it does. By hitting the start button, you can see that when it comes to loading the fuel, it will be loaded in 9 minutes 18 seconds. If you don't want to wait and you want to get it done straight away, you hit that button again and it'll go to pending. With the load cargo, you can do the same thing. You can either take 26 minutes to load it or expedite it and it's ready. Same thing with the passengers. 8 minutes to load them or get them in straight away. And for the purpose of this, what I'm doing, this so that I don't take hours going through this, you'll notice that the load fuel is still only says pending, and that's simply because you're already going to be using fuel on the APU, so it's changing all the time, so you won't get a ready situation for there. So okay, we should be finished with that. Now we can go back up to the top and you'll see that the APU bus light is on, so we can activate those.
Both on. Aft right fuel pump.
Now to help feed the APU,
On. External powered bus left and right.
Yeah, to provide fuel to the APU, you activate that button, that switch. Now that we've got the APU power available, we no longer need the GPU, so we turn them off.
Both off.
But
dismiss GPU.
Yes. Then we've got to go down and dismiss the GPU, so when we go back up again, you see the lights are out. So that's finished with the GPU, and we've dismissed it.
HP bleed.
Right, now we're going to start looking at the bleeds for the packs. It says here both on, they're over here. Switch down.
Both on. Galley.
Now the galley comes on.
Windshield anti-fog.
Now the thing about the MD is that when it comes to a windshield anti-fog, anti-ice, you turn it on while you're on the ground, not when you climbing or cruising. You turn it on the ground.
On windshield anti-ice. On IR, that's one and mode.
Now before I go and do the IRS, obviously if you run into icing conditions in the air, you've got your engine heaters here, and the airfoil would be for your wings, and I think there's one for the tail, but you have to read the instructions on exactly how that works. And because today I'm not flying in anything near winter conditions, I'm not going to worry about, won't need to worry about those during the flight. Okay, back to the list. It's the IRS have to be aligned, and they are up here. You can do two things with these screen. You can either pull them over, or you can actually rotate the knobs.
Both NAV.
And there they are.
Your damper.
Your damper is here. It has to be on now.
Logo light.
The logo light. Don't ask me why.
Radio rack.
I would only be normally putting that on at night time, but it says put it on. Radio Shack fan. Obviously that's a fan that blows air over the all the radios to keep them cool.
Fan. Cabin pressure.
Now it says cabin pressure set, but I'm not quite sure what that means. I haven't fiddled with any of these ram airs and things like that. All I know is that when you get going, your needle your meter seems to be working quite okay. Temperature as well seems to work okay. If you stick your temperature's on auto, you can't go wrong. I'll come back to this later. These are for you know, for your Q&H's at your destination, and we'll be obviously be doing those later. Wipers there if you need them. So we'll say cabin pressure's okay.
Altimeter.
Alright, now because I'm not using Avitab, I'm using little nav map on a separate screen, and that's going to be giving me all my details. I could drag it across, but I won't at the moment. So just going by that, it says Q&H is 1009. Right, now before I do that, I'll do that first. Bring it to 1009. We can light the panel up now. So move the yoke out of the way, and to do that, we grab and pull that across. That one across. That gives us both those there. The same thing with the FMS. FMC, what am I talking about? Okay, another thing I should point out, these are not independent of each other. In other words, this is really just a slave to the captain's one. In the Boeing and the Zebo, of course you can enter separate things. In this one, in this particular case, you can't. Okay, so that part's done. Altimeter set.
Fuel used reset.
The fuel used reset button is here. If I push it and we watch over here, we may see something change. No, I'm not quite sure what that's supposed to do, but anyway, I've done it.
Reset. Hydraulic pumps 1 and 2.
Right there, all the way over here next to the first officer's position.
Both low. Takeoff condition.
Now, all the takeoff conditions require is that the center of gravity is set to 0, and we'll be coming back to this a bit later when we're setting things up, but you can see it's set to 0, and it also says the flap setting is 0, which it is. Come over to there. You can see the flaps all the way up. Okay. Oh, and also they're set to 0 here as well. And again, we'll come back to that later.
CG 0 and flap 0. Transponder.
Alright, transponder's in the normal place. Below the quadrant and between the seats. And that's descent to
2000 and standby mode. Checklist complete. FMS assistant. Red airport.
Right, now what you can see is the checklist is wanting to go through the flight management computer settings, but we don't really need to follow this if you're familiar with the way the FMC works, and it is very, very similar to what you're used to if you're flying the Boeing, and to a certain extent I would imagine to the Mac do for the Airbus. So clear away the enter position, pause in it, and we enter in the departure Victor Tango Bravo Delta for Don Muang Airport. You don't have to go down the next page to get the GPS setting. You take the one up the top there and you'll enter it in there and it's done. Now you may have noticed that just to the left the IRS is obviously aligned and our gauges have come on. We'll come back to that. Over to route. Looks like a bit of a bright light there shining at us. It's a bit better. Our destination airport is Victor Tango Sierra Papa for Phuket. Right, now I'm not going to activate it just yet because I'm going to put in a company route just so that I can keep this video short. I've already have a route in the saved routes section of rotate. So VTBD, and it'll be to VT Sierra Papa. We'll enter in company route. We can now activate it. Flight number, I wasn't going to bother with one, but we'll just make up one for Japan Airlines. 150, that'll do. And we'll go to the perfect. By the way, you'll see the execute button is lit up. One thing to remember is you do not hit that button if the IRS is not aligned. It is, so I can hit execute. But anyway, we'll go to the perf init. All we have to do is push the buttons there, because remember we entered all the fuel and weights in before. The reserve in this case I've allowed for 2. Cost index anywhere between 0 and 1,000. 300. Actually, SimBrief does not give a cost index for the MD-80 82 for some reason. Cruise altitude is going to be 320. The cruising winds and temperature and wind 088 031. Outside temperature 15 degrees. Just to enter that straight in. Transit altitude in Thailand is 11,000. Ready for takeoff. Outside temperature again was 15. We enter that. Now you can do flex, but I haven't delved into that one yet. I think from what it's saying here is the flex temperature is 1 degree, so I'm not quite sure. Flex for the EPR, I believe you've got to move this knob for assumed temperatures for the EPR. Again, I'm not up on that quite yet. Okay, now here comes something a little bit unusual. I could enter the V1, VR, V2 by just pushing those buttons, but you do not do that unless your flaps are down at the setting, your takeoff setting. Now obviously in my particular case I've chosen 11, setting number flap 11 for takeoff. If I was to drop my flaps now to 11, I could push those buttons, but it's not recommended you do that. Instead, there is a table provided by Rotate, and I'm going to bring it up. But first off, before we do, the gross weight is 135. Let's say it's 136, and I'm going to bring across the table to use. And how we use it, you go by the weight, and remember we said 136. Well, you can't get, sometimes you can't get in between, so you just have to go with whatever the nearest is. So we'll use 137. Now I propose to be using flaps 11, which is fairly normal, a bit like, you know, the Boeing likes flaps 5. So if we go to 137, we go across to flaps 11, we'll see that that V1 is 136, VR is 141, and V2 is 149. So they're the figures to put in. So I'll move that out of the way. We no longer need it. First figure was 136. 141 and 149. Right, departure. Now again, we're going to go 21 right. I've already worked out a route, including the SIDS, for leaving Don Muang Airport, and the SID we're going to be using is Yucca 3A. I'll just go a bit straighter on that. Make sure I hit the right button. That's it there. Right. Now we can execute that, of course. That light's a bit of a nuisance. There we go. So the routes, I'm not going to worry about the stars at this stage, because obviously it depends on changing weather conditions. We'll go to our legs page. See that things are, there's no discos there. So we'll go back. Now because everything is aligned, we can check our route out. Okay, on this side, this is where you have all your modes and where you have your distances. And it's all very well, you can go backwards and forwards and move this one. No, we've got to rotate it like so. But I've assigned those to my one of my joystick buttons for mode and also for range, and it makes life a lot easier. So if we go over to the FMC there, we can go through our steps just to make sure everything is right. You can see that the SID is doing a big arc to the west soon as you take off. That's because the route is designed to take you away from flying over the middle of Bangkok. Right, so that's finished with the FMC so far, so we don't need that page.
Hey, init ref.
Same thing there, we don't need that page.
Before start checklist. APU delete air.
Right. Now we're going to get ready to start. So we've got to go through this procedure. APU bleed. That's the APU bleed there. Oh. Bloody there. It should have come on.
On.
Oh, there it is.
HP bleed.
I went down too far. HP bleed the packs. One has to come off.
1 off. PNUX feed valve left and right.
The feed valves are right down below the pedestal, below everything, and that's those levers there. Both of those have got
Both
to come
open.
on.
Doors.
I'm not real sure how that relates to the startup procedure, but no doubt there'll be some explanation in the instruction manuals. Okay, she wants all the doors closed, so down we go. Don't know what's happened here. Oh, there we go. Old mouse playing up a bit. Right, doors are to be closed. I might go outside and we'll close the cargo doors, and I'll take us outside and we'll just see how well the stairs operate. I can move this out of the way a bit. It's quite neat the way this works. Just pull us around a bit there. Right, we'll retract the stairs and up they come. Fold up and slide underneath the door, and we close the forward door. And go back inside. We're finished with that. We can tell that we've closed the doors.
Throttle. Idle.
Well,
Galley.
so here we go. Galley off again.
Off. Shaft and FWD fuel pumps.
Now these are all our fuel pumps, left and right. You notice we've already got the aft one on to supply fuel to the APU. We'll put those on.
Left and right on. Center fuel pumps.
Okay, center fuel pumps. Do we need it? Okay, let's have a look. Yes, we've got fuel in the center tank, and obviously we want to use those before we go to the wing tanks. So up we go, and we'll turn them on, and we'll tell her yes, we're going to use them.
AS required. HP bleed.
She wants both the HP bleeds off.
Both off. Hydraulic pumps 1 and 2. Both low. Hydraulic pumps trans.
Now she said the hydraulic pumps 1 and 2, and then said both low. In other words, they're already set to low. So that's done. The next thing is the transfer pumps.
Hydraulic aux. On. Position and strobe lights.
Position and strobe lights are over here on the right hand side, and what we do is we
Both on.
put them on.
Anti-foul light.
Now you might wonder, why do you put your strobes on now? Well, in fact, activating that switch does not turn them on while you're on the ground. They only come on, I believe, wheels up. Anti-collision light on.
Transponder.
Back to the transponder.
XBDR mode.
XBDR.
Checklist complete. FCU. Flight director.
Now up to the flight directors. Turning this one turns both on.
Max bank angle.
The maximum bank angle she wants set at
15 degrees. Heading runway track.
Runway track is 209 degrees.
Set. Departure altitude.
Now, because we don't have ATC to vector us around, I'm going to go straight to the set the cruise height 32,000. a bit like the IXEG Boeing 737-300. You grab and pull the knobs, but in the case of the rotate, you can also scroll them a bit. Maybe not for the altitude one though. You can do it for some of these others, but apparently not for that one. Okay.
Set speed.
Right, now there's a couple of things you can do with the speed, and I've seen this done on the tutorials. You can set the speed to V1 plus 10, I believe. So we'll do that. We'll go to 146, because remember V1 from our chart was 136. So we'll make that 146. Now I have actually flown this aircraft after I've set the speed at 250, which of course is the normal speed when you're climbing up to 10,000, and it seems to work okay, but we can actually bug up once the aircraft gets up to past 146 anyway, a bit like you can do in the Boeing.
Set engine start checklist. Ignition switch SYS8.
She's saying the ignition system A switch should be on, but I'm not going to turn that on first. That's the one here. That should go to the left until we've organised our pushback. The rotate has a built-in pushback facility. If you look here under aircraft management, no, it's not under here. I'm not quite sure where it, oh, I know, it's in here, I think. There you go. Request pushback, left, straight, right. I don't use it, and I don't think it's a good idea to use it when you've got better pushback. Now, because I know where which airport which runway we're heading to, we'll just go straight into the pushback.
Ground to cockpit, plan acknowledged. Call me through the menu when you are ready.
Right, here's another pause, and I'll try explain something about why it's a good idea now to set your trims rather than waiting till you've pushed back with engines running and you're sitting there waiting to taxi and you've got to do this little job. Now what we do is we go into the FMC, and we go to the init takeoff. Got to move it again because that bright light, I don't know what that's from. Now if you look here, there's a figure of 9 under the center of gravity. The CG is 9. That has to be set in so that you can calculate your trim, and to do that, 9 is the figure we want. We come up to the trim settings. So center of gravity is 9. We rotate this up to 9. Now because I'm going to be using a flap 11, we've already calculated that's what we're going to use when we did that calculating the V speeds. Up we go to 11. Now it's got to be spot on, and there's a reason for that. I'll explain. So what it's telling us now is that the long trim, which is the long trim wheel here, the gauge, whatever you want to call it, it says it's 7. Now this green pointer is lined up ready for the 7. How do you get the long trim to 7? You can either pull this thing down, and you can see on the right the other pointer is coming down. Now you can do that, or in my case I've got the up and down trim set in my joystick, so I can bring it down. It says 7, showing a little bit of 8, but 7 is close enough. Now one thing you must do, you have to line those 2 pointers up exactly. If you don't, and you push your throttle levers forward ready to taxi or to take off, you'll get a warning, and she'll howl at you telling you the stab's not right, whatever, trim's not right. Another thing, another warning, and I found out the hard way, is that if you set 11 as your flap setting, and before you take off you think, oh no, I'd rather set to flap 15, you'll get the same problem. She'll start screaming at you, telling you it's not right. We'll find out as we taxi along as to whether that is spot on. It looks pretty good. You should be right. And this is a reason why I do the settings now rather than wait until I'm sitting out waiting to get taxi clearance. So what we can next do is we can call for pushback.
Grounded cockpit, tow is driving up.
She did say before, ignition switch system A to on, but I don't do that until such time as the ground clearance says it's okay to start engines. I suppose you could be setting those trim wheels while this guy is hooking up and lifting the aircraft up. You could probably manage to do it.
Okay, all doors and hatches are closed. Ready to connect.
We can set this back 2 legs. I don't know whether that thing works or not. Looks a lot different from what we're used to, but you can see we're starting to lift up.
Tow connected and bypass pin inserted. Release parking brake. Starting pushback, and you may start engines.
Thank you very much. Now we can start our engines. So over to system A will do.
Engine start right.
We start right first, and to do that 2 clicks. 1 down and
On fuel valve right.
now what she's talking about is a fuel valve, but we don't that's there, the fuel valves there, but we don't open those until the N2 arises to 21. Bit slow, but just have to wait. Okay, so we're close enough. 21.
Open. Engine start left.
Now we don't do that until such time as the buses change over to engine gens, and while we're at it, you do not have to worry about switching the the gens on here, they're on when it's cold and dark. You just heard them click in then, so that means now we can start the left engine.
On. Fuel valve left.
Again, we've got to come down, wait for the N2 on the left engine to rise to 2021. Okay, we've got 21.
Open. Checklist complete. After start checklist. Ignition switch.
Operation complete. Go ahead and set the parking brake.
Set our parking brake. You'll see the bus.
Disconnecting tow. Stand by.
The buses switch over. Bang, there we go. Now, engine switch can go to off.
Off. Engine start.
We can turn both of our engine start switches off.
Both off. APU bleed air.
The bleed air goes off.
Off. APU powered bus left and right.
They can go off now because we're on the engine generators.
Both off. APU.
And we can turn the APU off.
Galley.
Galley goes on.
Fuel heat.
You can heat the fuel before it goes to the engines,
Tow is
but
disconnected and bypass pin has been removed. Hand signal on the left. We'll see you next time and have fun up there.
because we're in the tropics, I don't think we need to worry about heating our fuel.
AS required. Ice protect meters will heat. Capped.
Now,
Hydraulic pumps 1 and 2.
before we do that, this meter select heat is to do with the pitot heating. From what I understand, because it has to go to captain, it's the captain who controls the pitot heating. I'm not totally sure what that's all about. We now go to our hydraulic pumps. Both 1 and 2 have to be high.
Both high. PNUX feed valve left and right.
Now those feed valves can come off.
Both closed. HP bleed.
The bleed now goes to auto.
Both auto. Speed brake.
We arm the speed brake by
Time.
pulling it up.
Takeoff condition.
Now, the takeoff conditions were those things that we set here before. So, it's done.
CG and flaps set. Trim.
It's done.
Set. Flaps.
Flaps now. Time to set our flaps. There's our indicators there. Slats will come out. Might go outside and just have a look at that if we can see them. There you can see the slats are already come out. Second position should be flaps 11. Coming down nicely. Let's go back inside and make sure that they're set right. Flaps 11. So that's done.
Takeoff. Auto brake selector.
Goes
Takeoff.
to takeoff.
Checklist complete. Taxi out checklist. Seat belts.
Seat belts
On.
on.
Nose light.
That goes to dim.
Dim. Timer.
She wants us to start the
Run.
timer.
Parking brake. Release. Brakes.
Alright, time for me to check the controls now. I'm checking the brakes. I'll do the yoke, all the way forward, all the way back, all the way left, all the way right. I'll move it out of the way so we can do our pedals. Center them. Brakes
Check.
are done.
Flight controls.
Done.
Checked. Weather radar WX flashed cast.
So here's the weather radar. 2 clicks
Set.
to the right,
Transponder.
down to the transponder, and that goes to TA
TAW/array mode.
array.
Transponder direction.
Transponder direction above. Done.
Above. Auto brake mode.
Arm it.
Arm. Moral config warning.
Well, there's none. Well, there shouldn't be. Road of travel unrestricted. That's not a problem.
None. Checklist complete. Takeoff checklist. Ignition switch both.
Right, well, we're not ready to take off. We've got a taxi. I can push that out of the way. Yeah, another thing to do before we move. Again, there's quite a long list on this. We engage the EPR limit. That's some sort of power limit. And one other thing we have to do, we go down to the fuel quantity. Now the zero fuel weight was 114.8. We have to set that in there by holding this and entering it until it gets to 114.8. Let it go, and it goes back to the gross weight. It's some sort of adjustment to take into account, I believe, the fuel that's already been used. And with that being done, we should be able to move. And because I've got a little nav map up here, I can follow the taxi. I believe this is taxi Charlie down here. And we're going to head up to runway 21 right. One thing I've had to do is drop the sound a bit because a previous recording I tried to do, both the external and internal sounds just drowned me out. So I certainly hope it's a lot better now. Takeoff procedure is a bit different from your Boeings and Airbuses. Some sort of very odd sort of procedures. It doesn't, the aircraft doesn't have an L nav as such, it's just a straight nav. It has VNAV. I've never had any problem following the route. with autopilot. Bit of an outside view for a change. And we're nearly there at the okay. Throttle back a bit. Bit of braking. One thing, it's very, very easy aircraft to steer. A little bit offline there, but that's okay, we'll stop here. And we'll bring up our checklist again. Takeoff checklist, ignition switch both to on.
On. Landing lights left and right.
They're over here.
Both on. Nose light.
To bright.
Bright. EPR mode.
Now the EPR mode is here. You switch those on and all your headings and altitude settings will be here as we go along. It's to be set to takeoff.
Takeoff. Toga.
Right, now here's something a bit unusual. You don't put on your auto throttle and hit toga. You hit toga first. 2 buttons there. That engages toga. But all we do now is just line up.
Auto throttles.
We don't put the auto throttles on yet. We do that when we line up. Right, we stop it here. And what we have to do is hold the brakes and get the EPR up to about 1.3. Auto throttle on.
Takeoff and informations. Positive climb. Gear up.
I'll get rid of her. Okay, here we go. Now we don't get a call out. We have to watch our speed. When it gets to the first bug here, we know that's V1. So, V1, rotate. I should have called out speed alive, but I was too busy. Positive rate, gear up. Look at that. Doesn't that look good? Okay. Now we've got our work cut out for us. Autopilot on. Vertical speed. We're going to adjust that to about 2,000 feet a minute. and we're going to bug up the speed to 250. And we'll watch the about 200 flaps, first flaps up. We put on the nav, so we've got to follow the route. Flaps all the way up. IAS speed. Oh, look at it go. Make sure we're following the course. A little bit off, we're swinging around. And now that things are, we've actually increased speed a bit past the, we're already up showing 270, it's a bit too fast. We'll go for VNav. That should bring the speed back. To 250, should start dropping back. And at 11,000 feet, of course, transition height, you can see she's really climbing. Speed is still up there, I'm surprised, but anyway. And we can go to standard. A little bit faster than I thought. You should really be doing 250, or not according to the FMC, 270, so that's the right speed. Okay, back to work.
Up, no lights. All above okay?
Yes, it is.
Yes. Checklist complete. Climb checklist.
Right.
EPR mode.
EPR mode goes to climb. Climb mode's there, now we're on track in IAS speed. Oh, that's why. I'll try that VNav thing on again. Yeah. It was still on IAS speed. It's dropping back to 250. Anyway, we're in climb mode.
Centiliters. Auto brake selector.
Okay, that can go off now.
Off. Ignition switch.
Ignition switch can go off.
Off. Speed brake.
Speed brake.
Retracted.
Retracted.
Hydraulic pumps trans. Off. Hydraulic locks. Off. Nose light. Off. Landing lights left and right. Both off. Seat belt sign. Auto. Checklist complete. Cruise checklist. EPR mode.
Right, we're not at cruise yet, so this doesn't apply. Just while while we overspeeding. right. The VNAV went. I accidentally turned the VNAV off instead of leaving it on, so it should come back down. Yeah, it's starting to drop now. Yeah, I already had VNAV on. I didn't realise it. It's on now. And you can see that we're following the route. Just while I get back to this, on one of these checklists it says engine sync N1 or N2 on. That only applies if you've got a hot ass joist throttle control that has the 2 engine set up on it. If you've only got a throttle control that does both engines, you just ignore that. And you can see the speeds come back down to the red mark where it should have been. Now that's Bangkok over there. You can see I had ortho for that area and for a bit here. One of the tiles must have been just here, and another one over there. You can see the dividing here. Looks like our bird's speeding up a bit. That's right, now at 300 is the desired speed at 19,000. Looks like we're going to be slowly climbing up. The speed now is increased to 300. So now we can just sit back and enjoy the flight. What I might do is I'm going to do this flight in 2 parts because there's quite a lot involved. I hope you didn't find it too complicated. It may seem like that for the first half dozen flights, but after a while you do get used to it. It does become easier, and it gives you great satisfaction when you can control this aircraft. But just before I go, you can see our center tank is nearly depleted, so it might be a good idea at this stage to turn off the center pumps. Getting a warning, I don't know why, but I'll turn them back on, and then I will get a warning that the pressure is low. It's going down very quickly. Just shows you the rate of amount of juice that's being eaten up. Everything else here looks pretty good. Let's see if I get my warning now. Now there we've just got our warning there now, see? Center fuel pressure is low, so we can turn those off and that should disappear. There we go. Okay, like I said, I'll end this as part 1, and then part 2 will be, I'll pick up where we're getting close to a top of descent and eventual arrival at Phuket, and hopefully an ILS approach there. So until then, see ya.